Now back to Al Horford, and I guess I say that because he is a free agent, and Brad Stevens said it's looking unlikely that he's going to return. There are a few other free agents still out there. There's rumors that Bradley Beal is going to get bought out. It seems like that's going to be likely. There was a big trade that you and I haven't even talked about yet. John Collins to the Clippers, Norman Powell to the Heat, and then Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson are traded to the Jazz, which is crazy that all respect to both of them, but the Heat didn't really give up much to get a 22-point per game score in Norman Powell. I just gave you a bunch of different storylines. Chris Paul said this is going to be his last season. He's rumored to join the Clippers or the Suns. I gave you a lot to work with, but this is kind of the second wave of free agency news. Where do you stand on that stuff? You know, I feel like I'm emotional about Chris Paul in his last season. I feel like you're probably a little emotional about Al Horford, potentially moving on if he doesn't retire. So I guess we start there. Let's talk through it.
Yeah. You and I really have to sob through this one. I mean, the writing had kind of been on the wall, right, with Al Horford, but like even with every report that was like, he's looking at, like at one point it was the Lakers, and obviously the Warriors have been heavily tied to him this whole time. And like with the Jonas Valanciunas thing, like there were people like, oh, the Nuggets could be a good destination for him if Valanciunas doesn't end up there. And it's like the whole time I was kind of holding out hope that eventually he'd want to just come back to Boston and play in Boston to finish his career. And it's kind of like devastating to think that like if Tatum never tore his Achilles, we would probably never be in this position in the first place where Al Horford's about to walk out the door. But, at the same time, I respect that he's trying to get one more ring and he's going to be a Celtics legend forever. And like, obviously, I still think that he has plenty left to give to a contender. Like if he goes to Golden State, that's going to be a great pickup, especially because Kevon Looney ended up going to New Orleans too. So, that'd be a great fit. He's someone that, can play. He can guard multiple positions even still at this stage in his career, defend at a high level. He's going to knock down big shots, knock down big threes. He brings a championship swagger and DNA to a team. So I'm looking forward to seeing where he ends up. If it's Golden State, so be it. I think that'd be a good spot for him. But on the Chris Paul front, like I got to swing it back to you and see how you're feeling. One, on if you have a favorite destination that you hope that he ends up in out of the ones that he's been reported. And I feel like we've seen a lot of, both the LA teams, so Lakers or Clippers, the Milwaukee Bucks are another team that seem to be popping up in the mix. He still wants to start, at least it sounds like. So, one, how are you feeling on the idea that next year might be his last? And two, what destination do you think would be, kind of best for him to finish his career and potentially get that, elusive championship?
It's crazy, man. Like to start on how I'm feeling about it, because obviously I remember like not even day one of his career, day zero of his career. Like, first of all, we're gonna because we're uploading the full episodes these days. We're gonna start here because this is the Chris Paul that you know what I mean. Like
yes, sir.
That era of him at Wake Forest. But like I remember going to his draft workout with the New Orleans Hornets and like hoping that my favorite team drafted my favorite player from my favorite college school. And obviously this is year 21 he's going into it, and he's 40 years old. Like I didn't think he was going to play forever. And I will say to that point that the other guy in Los Angeles, LeBron James, has just warped everybody's thought and mentality. And you and I have kind of talked about this on the pod before that, if LeBron wasn't LeBron, it would be a much bigger deal that Chris Paul is going into year 21 and played all 82 games in year 20. And speaking of that, salute to Kyle Lowry, re-signed with the Sixers. The GOAT is coming back for year 20 as well. And then the same thing we're talking about with Al Horford, if he comes back and steps on the floor, it'd be year 19 for him. So these dudes, man, like big shout out to all of them. So it's tough. Like it's going to be so weird to like, I since I was 11 years old, I haven't known an NBA that doesn't have Chris Paul in it. So after this year, I won't anymore. But, if, as far as like his fit and where that goes, Milwaukee seems like the place that needs him the most where he could probably start thinking about everything they've done this year. And Giannis being Giannis, you always have a chance to win it all, bringing in Miles Turner, which also some interesting reporting on that as well, saying that the Pacers saying they didn't even get a chance to match that offer, which we talked about them getting lowballed. So interesting subplots, all of that. But it does feel like he wants to be close to his family in LA. Whether it's the Lakers or the Clippers or the Suns, which isn't that far from Los Angeles, but still isn't there. But I was laughing. I mentioned kind of hinting at this before the pod. Listen, if Chris Paul goes to the Clippers and they have him and John Collins, you might see me on the wall next season. That's all I'm saying. I might be at Into a Dome on the wall, rocking out. Because it's funny. There's always a joke where like anytime Wake Forest goes and plays, if we play Vanderbilt, then we're saying Nashville is Deep Town. Well, Jake LaRavia, John Collins, and Chris Paul in the same city, Los Angeles would definitely be Deke Town, especially when I come visit to see my boy KI and also see all of them take the floor. So that's a big thing, kind of hoping to see. And it would be funny to see, kind of similar to what we were talking about with Melo and the Knicks and Nuggets. Like, as much as I want the Hornets to be able, or the Pelicans and New Orleans franchise to be able to claim Chris Paul, like, his Clippers years, for him to go back and close it out there, for him to maybe right some wrongs that he couldn't right with James Harden, for him to play with John Collins, for him to, play with Kawhi, like, that would be cool to see. So, I feel like it's going to end up being him with the Clippers. Is pretty poetic. I don't necessarily know if I expect them to win big next year, and I would love to see him win a championship. But I think that the opportunities to do that are pretty slim unless he goes back to OKC or something like that. And, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen as well. So, I'm excited for him to be able to go out on his own terms, be in year 21, and definitely look forward to kind of summing that up, whether it's on here, whether it's in writing, or probably both. But definitely got to make sure to get a chance to see him play one more time this year before he calls it.
Yeah, I think one thing that I want to point out, for anybody that wasn't watching all that closely last year, like, so Chris Paul went to the Spurs to be like that veteran and try and lead them to, hopefully get back to the playoffs and do what Chris Paul does, which is increase the win percentage of every single team that he goes to. And obviously Wemby had a very, very unique situation with the blood clot in his shoulder that shut him down early. And then slowly but surely they shut down De'Aaron Fox. They started kind of packing it in and starting to tank to eventually end up with the number 2 pick and getting Dylan Harper. So it worked out. But what people might have missed when they stopped tuning into Spurs games once Wemby stopped playing is that Chris Paul was still really good and really impactful last year. He was one of 6 players in the NBA to start all 82 games. That is absolutely ridiculous for someone who at the time was 39 years old, is now 40 years old. And he still had 12 double-doubles last year. And he averaged like 7 assists a game and like 8 points. And he had some really, really solid games for them. So this isn't just, a veteran at the end of his career going to some team to, be a vocal leader and a cheerleader on the bench. Like, for Chris Paul to outright say like he hopes to still be a starter, or at least through reports, say that he hopes to still be a starter, that's not because he's like, being stubborn and is like, oh, I'm Chris Paul, I'm one of the greatest point guards of all time. It's like, no, he's still good enough to start on a team that wants to win basketball games. And he proved that last year with the Spurs. And I really think that even in year 40, even at age 40, might as well be age 40 or year 40, even at 40 years old, like, I still think that he can contribute to winning at the highest level next year. And I'm very excited to see where he ends up. I think that's going to be, him along with some of the other guys that are still hanging around. And I know we didn't really mention like restricted free agency and like how kind of weird that market's been this year with Giddey and Jonathan Kuminga and Quentin Grimes. Like, there hasn't really been a lot of movement on that front, but for the unrestricted free agents that are still left, and a lot of them are kind of like the older heads and Russell Westbrook and Chris Paul and Al Horford, where we're like really like, all right, where are these guys going to end up? Like, I think Chris Paul has a chance to make as big of an impact as any of those guys that we just named.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I guess I have to mention the other side of it too, the other side of the coin. It feels like that, back to kind of, obviously we talked a lot about Chris Paul, but the Clippers situation, it felt like they were very comfortable parting ways with Norman Powell, one, for the financial flexibility. Big paydays coming for him, and it'll be very earned. But it does kind of seem like they know that Bradley Beal is going to prefer to join them if and when he is bought out by Phoenix. So, I don't necessarily know at this stage. I think at this stage, Bradley Beal was solid the past few years. But the problem with that is the Suns needed him to be much more than solid because of him making $50 million a year. Like, look, if he's coming in on a vet min or MLE and he's, or mid-level exception, and he's averaging, 16 and 4 and 4, which is what he's been doing on efficient shooting splits, I'm not complaining at all. But obviously there were a lot of circumstances, things out of his control as well. And it was a weird situation, him not waiving his no trade clause and all of that stuff. But I feel like I'm not going to say you're not losing much, but I do think that if Bradley Beal's in a better situation, then maybe Chris Paul's there as well. Now maybe we're talking about the Clippers doing a little more. Obviously got Brook Lopez backing up Zubats. Like, they're an interesting team in the Western Conference. They're kind of in that second tier. Obviously OKC, Houston, upper crust, upper tier. But like, the Clippers could make some noise if things shake their way, especially if they land these two guys or one of these two guys.
Yeah, I didn't love the Norman Powell trade, honestly. Like, I think he's so much better than Bradley Beal at this stage of Bradley Beal's career. Yeah. I really do. But obviously, like, getting John Collins in return is a great fit. Like, I like that aspect for them. Where like, again, like the Utah side of things, I'm like, I don't know what the hell they are doing. I mean, like you see the breakdowns of like, they traded, they traded like Colin Sexton, John Collins, and who am I missing?
They bought out Jordan Clarkson.
Oh, and bought out Jordan Clarkson. And in return, they ended up with like basically nothing. I don't understand at all. That to me, that part
Kevin
of the deal
Love, Kyle Anderson, and
Yusuf Nurkic. Right?
Yeah.
Yusuf Nurkic, man. Like what's going on there? Maybe they're all expiring contracts. Honestly, I didn't even look that up to see. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what it is. But like that kind of reminded me of like, you're like, that's all Miami had to give up to get Norman Powell, who was one of the best pure scorers in the NBA last year. Like it kind of reminded me in a way of like I remember you and I both kind of going back and forth when the Wizards did the Lakers an absolute favor and just traded them Rui Hachimura for a second round pick and Kendrick Nunn, who was already on his way out the NBA. I was like, what kind of blackmail did Rob Pelinka have on their GM at the time that made them do that deal? Like that's kind of how I felt about the deal from Miami's side. Like I'm like, all right, well, like, at least for the Clippers, like, they had to give up Norman Powell to get John Collins, but for Miami, they didn't have to give up anything of any value to get Norman Powell, and they need a half-court scorer like Norman Powell so bad, and I love that addition for Miami.
I started laughing because, first of all, we respect Russell Westbrook on this pod. One of the greatest to ever do it. But that's what happened.
Yes,
the Wizards were like, hey, look, man, we appreciate you taking Russ off our hands a couple of years ago. You can have Rui. It's all good. Like, appreciate y'all. That's the only logical answer for that. But still, shout out to Russ. I'm interested to see where he lands as well. Seems like that 1 year thing in Denver was a 1 year thing. Which, by the way, we're still waiting to figure out. You and I talked so much about what Jonas Valanciunas was going to do out there, and now it's like, is he going to Denver? Is he going to Greece? I made a joke. Because one of my teammates from Wake is playing in Greece. Like, man, he'd rather play next to Dinos Mitoglou than play behind Nikola Jokic. I get it. I played next to him before too, so it is what it is. Anyway, as we wrap up here, I feel like we talked about the majority of the big storylines and all that stuff. We discussed the trades and the free agents and everybody that's out there. Am I missing anything? I don't know. I guess shout out to the WNBA All-Star is next weekend. Team Clark versus Team Collier. Caitlin Clark back from injury. Angel Reese, 6 straight games, 15 plus rebounds as of today, but she's playing right now. So we'll see if that streak goes on. But I feel like I missed something. Did we discuss something else? I don't know. It
was really just the restricted free agency, I think, was the only thing that we thought about talking about. And it's just to kind of gloss over that for anyone that hasn't been paying attention. Like, it sounds like the restricted free agency market is kind of just completely out of whack because no team has cap space to throw. Yeah. I guess actually, let me wind this back even a little bit more, just in case listeners aren't fully familiar with what restricted free agency is and like what it entails. But basically, like, teams can throw an offer sheet at these players. So, the big ones being Jonathan Kuminga, Quentin Grimes, and Josh Giddey. And the teams that currently roster them have a chance to match that offer sheet, no matter what the price is. And if they don't want to match it, then they become an unrestricted free agent, and that the team that throws the highest offer at them can sign that. But no team has cap space. So there's nobody to kind of combat or set the market for these players. So it's basically just internal negotiations between the team that they're currently on and can you meet the price that they're asking for? And since there's no teams throwing money at these guys, I'm sure their agents are like, run me the max. Like, we want all the money. Like, this is what teams would throw at us if they had money available. And since there's no teams that have money available, well, guess what? This is still the money that we want. And for someone like Josh Giddey, like, he was incredible in the second half of the season, but he's shown limitations in the playoffs for OKC before. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sure the Bulls are a little bit hesitant to give him a max contract, the same way that the Warriors are probably a little hesitant to give Jonathan Kuminga the money that he wants, because I'm sure a lot of the money that he wants is based on, hey, this is what I could do for you in the future, not necessarily what I've already done for you. So, it seems like they've been trying to work a sign and trade with the Kings, and that has not gone anywhere whatsoever. And I haven't even heard anything on the Bulls front about the last report that I saw about the Josh Giddey thing was they were the Grand Canyon apart from like what his agent wants and what the team is trying to give him. And then Quentin Grimes, the last thing that anybody heard was that he wanted $25 million a year. And like, are the Sixers really going to be the team that gives him that? So it's kind of just, it's a stalemate right now in restricted free agency. I don't know if you have any thoughts on what's been going on so far or how those situations play out.
Yeah, I think the Golden State situation with Jonathan Kuminga, I'm trying to get the numbers to pull up right now, but it's so interesting because I feel like that ship has sailed. It feels like not that they don't want it back, but I think they don't really want it back. And I think there's some real truth behind Steve Kerr not really liking him or not being his favorite player to play. It's pretty obvious. But look and see, like, it was what, 49, 79, nice. Like, he's out of the rotation, not playing at all. Steph Curry goes down and he averages 24 points over the last 4 games of the playoff series against the Timberwolves. Like, dude is talented, but at the same time, I think that of all people, shout out to him, but of all people, I heard Eric Paschal talking about why he didn't fit in the Warriors system, because like you have to play a certain way. I think that Jonathan Kuminga doesn't necessarily fit that. And I think that that's kind of why it's just not going to ever really work, because Steph Curry is a system. And if you can't align with that, then it's never going to work. But what I was reading about that is like, the Pelicans are technically a team that's interested, but the Warriors like, hey, we have a guy that averaged 24 the last 4 playoff games, and we don't really play him in the playoffs. But if you want him, give us your guys that play in the playoffs in a sign and trade. So like, give us Trey Murphy or give us Herb Jones or you know what I mean? It's like, that is where it ends up being like a big stalemate externally, because it's like, if I'm a team and I'm trying to get this guy who you don't really want or value, why should I give you guys that I want and value? You know what I'm saying? So it's just an interesting thing. Because again, like, maybe who was it? I don't know. Somebody else has probably done it too. But remember when Greg Monroe signed his qualifying offer and then just played out his last season and then was like, I'm gonna be a free agent. I want to get out of here. Like, it could get to that point with some of these guys where, like, because like you mentioned, the restricted free agencies, because they sent a qualifying offer for, whatever it is, 12, 15, $16 million. You play out that year and then you become an unrestricted free agent. So I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of those 3 guys ends up being the situation with them where they can actually test the open market where there's more money to go around next offseason.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm like, Quinn Grimes is someone who, like, I feel like he's probably primed to be in that situation, because like I do actually wonder how negotiations change after that first VJ Edgecombe Summer League game. Like, I know that we had that whole thing already on the pod about how like Summer League doesn't matter, but like the dude went crazy in the first Summer League game. You already have Maxey, and Jared McCain is good, and VJ Edgecombe, I mean, you just took him with the number 3 overall pick, so you are hoping that he pans out. And Quentin Grimes put up like insane video game numbers at the end of the year during garbage time. He was everybody's, fantasy league MVP, because during the time of the fantasy playoffs, he was the guy to have on your roster. He's going for 30, 40 point games, 20 point double doubles, like all of this. Like, he was awesome at the end of the year. But, are you going to pay a guy? Like, are you going to throw the amount of money that he honestly deserves at him when you already have Maxey and McCain and Edgecombe? Like, I can't imagine that helped his negotiation, or at least, his agent's negotiation. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting situation. I don't know what's going to, I feel like Giddey will end up on the Bulls. At some point, they're going to, come to terms and find an agreement that works for both sides, because it would be stupid to let him go. But like on the other two, with Kuminga and Grimes, like, I really have no idea where those 2 guys end up. Yeah.
And one last thought on Grimes. It's so crazy. We'll look back at his career, like, he's like 23, 24 years old. He's already played for the Knicks, Pistons, Mavericks, and 76ers. Like, all these things have kind of happened so quickly, you kind of forget about it. And, obviously it was due to injury. But I think that it would behoove the Sixers to maybe have somebody just in case that more injury insurance could never hurt the team like the Sixers. But we'll see how that plays out. So I'm excited to follow that. And obviously you and I will be exchanging text messages and stuff about the Summer League performances. And once we get some resolutions on these contract situations, and if something big enough happens, we will definitely react to it in a soundbite or on Soundsystem. So please keep it locked in with us for that. Thanks for checking out NBA Soundsystem Canada on YouTube. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe below and find us wherever you get your podcasts. And on Instagram, we have weekly episodes and bonus content throughout the week.